We live in a world that never stops talking. From the moment we wake up to the endless scroll of notifications, the constant buzz of meetings, and the pressure to always have something to say, it feels like silence has become a forgotten language. We're taught that to be heard, you must speak up. To be influential, you must command the room. But what if everything we've been told about communication is missing one of the most profound tools of true power? What if some of the greatest masters of influence throughout history achieved their impact not by speaking more, but by embracing the strength of silence? The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most respected leaders and thinkers, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength often begins in stillness, in the quiet spaces between words, in the pauses where most rush to fill the void. There lies an incredible opportunity, not just for self-mastery, but for genuine influence. This isn't about staying silent out of shyness or uncertainty. It's about choosing silence with purpose, as a deliberate practice rooted in ancient wisdom. It's what I call the speechless strategy, a way of engaging with the world that values observation over reaction, listening over asserting, and calm over chaos. Throughout this video, we'll explore how Stoic principles like emotional control, intentional listening, and strategic restraint can transform not only how you communicate but how you lead, negotiate, and connect with others. We'll dive into stories of leaders, thinkers, and everyday practitioners who used silence not as a weakness, but as leverage. What if the most influential people in history spoke less and observed more? What could we learn from their example? If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the noise of modern life or wondered how to cultivate more clarity and impact in your interactions, you're in the right place. This isn't just about communication, it's about reclaiming your inner quiet to create outer influence. Let's begin. Stoicism teaches that wisdom often lies in silence. This might sound counterintuitive in a culture that prizes quick responses and constant engagement, but the Stoics understood something profound about human interaction. True influence doesn't start with a brilliant argument or a captivating monologue. It begins with the quiet, deliberate act of listening, not just hearing words, but fully absorbing the meaning behind them, the emotions driving them, and the context surrounding them. The philosopher Epictetus, born into slavery and well acquainted with power dynamics, placed immense value on this practice. He taught that by listening attentively, we can better discern what is within our control and what is not. This is the foundational Stoic principle for navigating any situation. We cannot control what others say or do, but we have complete authority over how we choose to listen and respond. When we listen with the sole purpose of understanding rather than preparing our next point, we stop reacting to the world and start engaging with it thoughtfully. Consider a leader facing a corporate crisis with rumors spreading and team morale plummeting. The easy, reactive path would be to immediately address everyone, to try and control the narrative with a flood of assurances. But a leader grounded in Stoic practice might do the opposite. They might first choose to listen, to hold space for their team's fears and frustrations without interruption, to hear the concerns behind the water cooler gossip, to understand the real problems before offering solutions. This isn't passive, it's an active and strategic use of silence. By listening deeply, this leader isn't just gathering information, they are building an unshakable foundation of trust. People feel heard and valued, which in turn makes them far more receptive to guidance when it finally comes. This approach transforms the leader from a mere authority figure into a genuine source of stability. Epictetus urged his students to focus their energy only on what they could influence, their own judgments, desires, and actions. Applying this to communication, the one thing we can always control in any conversation is our capacity to listen. We can choose to listen without the ego's desperate need to be right, to impress, or to win. We can listen to understand the other person's perspective, which is entirely within our control, rather than wasting energy trying to control their opinion of us. This shift changes everything. It turns interactions from battles to be won into opportunities for connection and clarity. When you truly listen, you often find that the core of many conflicts isn't a disagreement on facts, but a simple human desire to feel understood. So let's bring this into your own life for a moment. When was the last time you listened without the intent to reply, not just waiting for your turn to talk, but fully immersing yourself in the other person's words, holding space for their experience without layering on your own judgment or advice? This is the Stoic art of listening. It's a disciplined practice that quiets the internal noise of your own agenda, allowing you to perceive the reality of a situation with remarkable clarity. It is in this quiet space that true wisdom has room to grow, and with it, genuine influence. How often do emotions dictate your words? In the heat of an argument or the flush of excitement, it's incredibly easy to let our immediate feelings take the wheel, steering our conversations into places we never intended to go. The Stoics offered a powerful antidote to this reactive cycle, and it hinges on a concept that is often misunderstood: cognitive detachment. This isn't about becoming cold, unfeeling, or indifferent to the world around you. Instead, it's about developing the mental space to separate the raw event itself from the judgment or story we immediately attach to it. A colleague's critical email is just text on a screen, a neutral event. It is our judgment that labels it as a personal attack, and that judgment is what triggers the emotional flood and the defensive, often regrettable, reply. Stoic detachment is the practice of inserting a pause between that event and that judgment, giving you back the reins of your response. Seneca, the great Roman statesman and Stoic philosopher, was a master of this practice. He wrote extensively about the dangers of being carried away by first impulses, advising us to build a habit of delay. One of his most pertinent quotes on this is, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." He urges us to postpone our reaction, to command ourselves to wait. In that waiting, in that intentional silence, the initial heat of emotion begins to cool, and the clarity of reason has a chance to emerge. This pause is where your power truly lies. It's not about suppressing what you feel, but about creating a buffer that allows you to choose your words based on your principles and your goals, rather than being a puppet to your passing emotions. Consider the high-stakes environment of a hostage negotiator. Their entire success depends on this exact form of Stoic detachment. When a person on the other end of the line is shouting, making threats, and driven by intense emotion, the worst possible thing the negotiator could do is react in kind. Instead, they utilize a strategic silence. They listen, they absorb the emotion without absorbing the panic, and they respond with measured, calm clarity. That silence isn't empty, it's actively de-escalating. It communicates control and stability, and it often forces the other person to sit in their own emotional discomfort, compelling them to become more reasonable. The negotiator understands that the event, the threat, is not the real challenge. The challenge is managing the judgment and emotion it creates, both in the subject and in themselves. This principle translates perfectly into our daily lives. Imagine you're in a meeting and a coworker publicly dismisses your idea. The immediate, impulsive reaction might be to defend yourself, to counterattack, to prove them wrong in front of everyone. This is the emotional mind taking over. But what would change if you responded from logic instead of impulse? A Stoic pause would allow you to detach. You might see that their dismissal isn't really about you. It could stem from their own insecurity, a bad day, or a simple misunderstanding. Your logical response, chosen from a place of calm, could be to simply say, "I'd be interested to understand your concerns better. Could we discuss them after the meeting?" This response maintains your dignity, demonstrates professional maturity, and often completely disarms the other person because it refuses to engage on an emotional battlefield. It shifts the entire dynamic from a personal conflict to a collaborative discussion. Ancient orators and Stoics alike knew the weight of a well-timed silence. In the forums of Rome and the lecture halls of Athens, the most powerful speakers understood that their words were only half of the equation. The spaces between those words held an incredible, often untapped, power to shape perception and guide understanding. This wasn't merely a theatrical trick. It was a deeply philosophical practice aligned with the Stoic pursuit of deliberate action. Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on this very idea, urging himself to act with intention rather than impulse. He wrote, "Let every impulse and every action be directed to a social end." Applying this to speech, a strategic pause is the embodiment of that intention. It is the conscious choice to act by not immediately acting, to speak by briefly not speaking. This creates a vacuum of sound that the human mind instinctively rushes to fill, not with more of your words, but with its own reflection. In that shared silence, your point is given room to land, to resonate, and to be truly considered rather than just heard. This practice transforms communication from a mere exchange of information into an experience. A speaker who is comfortable with silence exudes a profound confidence. They are not anxious to fill every moment, proving they have no need for constant validation. This self-assurance is contagious, compelling the audience to lean in and attribute greater value to the words that do eventually break the quiet. It signals that what is being said has been carefully considered and is therefore worth careful consideration. Furthermore, a pause acts as verbal punctuation, highlighting your most important points. Just as a highlighter draws the eye to key text on a page, a moment of silence before or after a crucial statement makes it stand out in the listener's memory, giving it emphasis that volume or repetition alone can never achieve. Consider a teacher in a classroom posing a complex question to their students. The immediate instinct after a few seconds of quiet might be to jump in, to rephrase the question, or to call on a specific student to break the tension. But a teacher practicing the Stoic pause does the opposite. They hold the silence, allowing the discomfort to hang in the air. This quiet pressure is not punitive, it is productive. It communicates to every student that thoughtful answers require thoughtful time. It tells them that the teacher has the patience to wait for their genuine engagement. In that extended pause, the initial surface-level answers fade away, making space for deeper, more insightful contributions to emerge from the students who needed an extra moment to gather their courage and their thoughts. The teacher, by saying nothing, has actually taught a powerful lesson in patience and depth. Marcus Aurelius championed the value of measured and purposeful communication. One of his reflections perfectly captures this spirit. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. We can extend this wisdom to our conversations. An offensive comment or a challenging question doesn't have to be met with an immediate, reactive retort. We can choose to pause, to refuse to turn it into something explosive, and in doing so, we maintain control over the interaction and our own emotional state. This thoughtful approach to speech ensures our words are tools for building understanding rather than weapons for winning battles. So where could a pause improve your communication today? Perhaps it's in your next presentation, taking a deliberate breath after stating your core idea to let it sink in with your audience. Maybe it's during a difficult conversation with a partner, where choosing silence over a sharp rebuttal could de-escalate rising emotions and create space for empathy. It might even be in an email where instead of firing off a reactionary response, you close the laptop for 5 minutes, allowing yourself the clarity that only a moment of quiet contemplation can provide. The power of the pause is always available to you, a simple yet profoundly effective tool to convey confidence, encourage reflection, and communicate with true Stoic intention. Not every thought needs to be voiced. This simple yet profound realization is at the heart of using silence as a form of emotional armor, a protective barrier that the Stoics understood was essential for preserving our inner peace. In a world that constantly encourages us to share, react, and opine on everything instantly, the disciplined choice to remain silent is a radical act of self-preservation. It's not about suppressing your genuine feelings or avoiding important conversations. It's about recognizing that much of what we feel compelled to say in the heat of the moment stems not from a place of wisdom or necessity, but from ego, insecurity, or a raw, unprocessed emotional impulse. By withholding these reactive words, we aren't being passive. We are actively choosing to protect our mental and emotional state from the turbulence that unnecessary conflict inevitably brings. This practice is deeply rooted in Stoic resilience, particularly in the core teaching of Epictetus, who famously stated, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them." Let's sit with that for a moment. The event itself, a rude comment, a perceived slight, a piece of office gossip, holds no inherent power to upset us. It is our opinion of that event, the story we instantly tell ourselves about what it means and why it matters, that generates the emotional turmoil. When we feel the urge to immediately voice that opinion, to defend ourselves or counterattack, we are essentially giving more power and validity to that initial, often flawed judgment. Silence acts as a buffer. It creates a sacred space between the external event and our internal reaction, allowing us to question the opinion we've formed. Is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is voicing it necessary or virtuous? More often than not, the answer is no. Epictetus offered further guidance on this, advising, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" This isn't about self-deprecation. It's a masterclass in emotional deflection through silence and humor. It completely disarms the intention of the gossip, and more importantly, it protects your own mind from being consumed by someone else's opinion. You refuse to engage in the emotional economy of gossip, thereby preserving your energy and integrity. You recognize that their words are a reflection of their own judgments, which are outside of your control, and you consciously choose not to let them dictate your inner state. Imagine a common scenario. You're in a group chat or a social gathering, and the conversation turns to gossiping about a mutual acquaintance. The easy, automatic path is to lean in, to add your own piece of speculation or judgment to feel included. But each contribution, however small, chips away at your integrity and pulls you into a negative emotional vortex. The Stoic alternative is to simply remain silent. You don't have to make a grand show of disapproval. You can just choose not to participate. This silent refusal acts as your armor. It shields you from the guilt of contributing to harm, from the anxiety of your words being repeated, and from the overall drain of negative energy. It maintains your character and your calm. Similarly, in a heated debate on social media, the most powerful response to a provocative comment is often no response at all. By not engaging, you deny the other person the emotional reaction they are seeking, and you preserve your own tranquility. You have not lost an argument, you have chosen to win back your peace of mind. This is how silence functions as a shield. It protects you from the emotional turmoil that is almost always self-inflicted through our own rash words. Every time you withhold a sarcastic retort, a defensive explanation, or a piece of idle gossip, you are not missing an opportunity, you are actively fortifying your inner citadel. You are practicing the Stoic art of distinguishing between what is worth your energy and what is merely noise. So, how might this kind of deliberate silence shield you from emotional turmoil in your own life? It might be the difference between a peaceful evening and a night spent agonizing over a foolish argument you wish you hadn't started. It could be the barrier that keeps a colleague's bad mood from becoming your own. In choosing what not to say, you are ultimately choosing which battles are worth fighting, and more importantly, you are choosing the preservation of your own unshakable calm. What can you truly learn about someone when you stop trying to tell them who you are and simply watch to discover who they are? We spend so much of our social energy projecting an image, explaining our intentions, and narrating our lives that we often forget the most valuable data is streaming to us constantly from the people and world around us if we would only quiet ourselves enough to receive it. This practice of silent observation is far from passive. It is an active, disciplined form of engagement that the Stoics considered essential for developing true discernment. Marcus Aurelius dedicated significant thought to this, advising himself to observe the world without the cloud of immediate judgment. He wrote in his Meditations, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." This is the foundational principle for observing to understand. When you silence your own internal commentary and your need to label things as good or bad, you begin to see things as they actually are, not as your biases wish them to be. You move from reacting to perceptions to understanding realities. Think of the most skilled detectives in any investigation. Their genius rarely lies in brilliant interrogation or dramatic speeches. It is found in their almost supernatural capacity for silence and observation. They enter a room and they absorb it. They notice the tiny inconsistencies everyone else misses: the coffee cup placed too far from the desk, suggesting a visitor, the specific wear pattern on a pair of shoes that hints at a profession, the slight hesitation in a person's story that reveals a hidden anxiety. They understand that people are constantly communicating who they are through 1,000 unconscious signals: their body language, their tone of voice, what they choose to emphasize, what they nervously avoid. The detective's power comes from withholding their own voice, from creating a vacuum of silence that the subject feels compelled to fill, often revealing more than they ever intended. This is not manipulation, it is the cultivation of profound attention. It is the practice of receiving the entire picture before ever attempting to draw a conclusion. This Stoic practice of mindfulness transforms everyday interactions into a rich source of insight. In a business meeting, instead of mentally rehearsing your next point, try truly watching. Notice who seeks the spotlight and who carefully considers their words before speaking. Observe who makes eye contact when difficult topics arise and who subtly looks away. These are not trivial details, they are a real-time map of group dynamics, hierarchies, and individual character. This information is incredibly powerful. It allows you to understand motivations that are never stated aloud, to anticipate concerns before they become obstacles, and to tailor your communication in a way that resonates with the actual people in the room, not just the personas they present. You move from being a participant in the conversation to being a student of human nature, and that shift grants you a significant advantage in influence and connection. Marcus Aurelius practiced this himself, not for gain but for understanding. He would observe the flaws and vanities of those in his court, not to condemn them, but to better understand human nature and to remind himself of the virtues he wished to cultivate. He wrote, "How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only at what he does himself to make it just and holy." This observation without judgment is key. It's not about building a case against someone. It's about building a clearer understanding of the world. When you judge less, you see more. You begin to recognize that a colleague's abruptness might stem from stress, not arrogance, or that a friend's distraction might be a sign of a private worry, not a lack of care for you. This understanding fosters patience and empathy, allowing you to respond to the root cause of behavior rather than the superficial symptom. So, let's turn this inward for a moment. In your own life, what have you potentially missed by speaking instead of observing? How many times has your monologue drowned out the crucial clues someone was offering you about their needs or their state of mind? Perhaps you missed the subtle change in a partner's demeanor that signaled they needed support because you were too busy recounting your own day. Maybe you failed to see a team member's lack of engagement with a project because you were focused on selling your vision rather than reading their reaction. Every conversation is a two-way street of verbal and nonverbal communication, and when we privilege our own output, we blind ourselves to half the information available to us. The practice of silent observation corrects this imbalance, making you a better partner, leader, and friend by making you a more perceptive and present human being. Sometimes saying nothing says everything. This is the subtle art of controlling the narrative, not by adding more to the conversation, but by strategically and purposefully subtracting your own voice from it. In an age where everyone is shouting to be heard, the most powerful person in the room is often the one who remains comfortably, confidently quiet. This isn't about being secretive or manipulative. It's a profound exercise in Stoic self-control, rooted in the understanding that your worth is not determined by external validation, and that not every battle of opinions is worth fighting. By refusing to engage in every debate, explain every action, or defend every position, you communicate a deep sense of self-assurance. You signal that your inner stability is not contingent on others' approval, and in doing so, you shift the dynamic entirely. People are forced to confront their own perceptions and assumptions because you have not provided them with easy answers or a reactive emotional response to latch onto. Your silence becomes a canvas upon which they project their own expectations, and often, in that void, they find not the weakness they anticipated, but a formidable and unshakable strength. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, was a powerful advocate for this disciplined approach to conversation. He saw endless, trivial talk as a drain on one's vital energy and a distraction from pursuing a life of virtue. In his moral letters, he advises Lucilius, avoid shabby and cheerless talk, and also everything that is boastful and everything that is not restrained and not gentlemanly. But his counsel goes even deeper than avoiding gossip. He warns against the frantic need to be a part of every discussion, to have an opinion on everything, and to constantly seek the spotlight. This relentless verbal engagement, he argues, is often just a mask for insecurity, a way to prove our existence and importance to others. The Stoic alternative is to speak only when it is true, necessary, and kind. Withholding speech in situations that fail these criteria is not a loss. It is a conscious preservation of your integrity and energy. It is the practice of valuing the quality of your silence over the quantity of your words. A masterful historical example of this principle in action is the demeanor of Queen Elizabeth I during her long and tumultuous reign. In an era riddled with religious conflict, political conspiracy, and constant pressure to marry and name a successor, her court was a hotbed of speculation and anxiety. Advisors, suitors, and foreign ambassadors were endlessly trying to pry a definitive statement from her regarding her intentions. Yet, she became famous for her ability to remain enigmatic. She would often respond to direct, pressing questions with thoughtful silence, vague answers, or by changing the subject entirely. This strategic ambiguity was not a sign of indecisiveness. It was a brilliant political tool. By not committing to a fixed public position, she prevented factions from forming against her and kept all potential allies guessing and vying for her favor. Her silence maintained her authority because it denied her opponents a clear target. They could not attack a plan she had not revealed or rally against a decision she had not made. She controlled the entire political narrative not through grand speeches, but through a regal and composed restraint that kept everyone off balance and ultimately secured her power for over 4 decades. This practice translates powerfully into our modern lives, far beyond the halls of power. Imagine you've completed a major project at work and a skeptical colleague publicly questions your methodology in a meeting. The instinctual reaction is to immediately jump to your own defense, to list every reason why your approach was correct, to prove your competence on the spot. But this often comes across as defensive and insecure, and it pulls you into a public debate you can't truly win. The Stoic approach is to exercise control over the narrative with silence. A simple, calm response like, "I appreciate the feedback, I based my process on thorough research, and I'm confident in the outcome," followed by a comfortable pause, is incredibly powerful. It acknowledges the comment without endorsing its criticism. It demonstrates confidence without arrogance, and it closes the door on further debate without being dismissive. Your silence after the statement speaks volumes. It says the matter is not up for further discussion because you have no need to prove yourself. You have effectively ended the challenge on your own terms, controlling how you are perceived not by what you said, but by what you chose not to say. So, when has silence worked in your favor? Perhaps it was when you received unfair criticism, and by not responding, you denied the critic the satisfaction of a reaction and allowed the situation to dissipate naturally. Maybe it was during a negotiation when you stated your terms and then waited quietly, making the other party so uncomfortable with the silence that they felt compelled to fill it with a concession. It could be as simple as resisting the urge to correct someone's minor factual error in a social setting, thereby preserving the harmony of the conversation and your own peace of mind. Each time you consciously withhold a word that doesn't need to be said, you are not losing your voice, you are mastering it. You are choosing to define yourself by your actions and your character, not by your endless explanations. In a world addicted to noise, your quiet confidence becomes your most compelling narrative. Mastery over speech is mastery over oneself. This direct and powerful truth cuts to the very core of Stoic philosophy, framing our daily conversations not as trivial exchanges, but as a primary training ground for building character and resilience. The discipline of restraint isn't about repression. It's a conscious, virtuous choice to align your words with your principles, ensuring that what leaves your mouth serves a purpose greater than simply filling the air or venting a temporary feeling. Epictetus, who focused intensely on the practical application of philosophy, placed immense importance on this very idea. He taught his students that a wise person carefully guards their speech, understanding that every word spoken is a reflection of their inner state and their commitment to living a virtuous life. He famously advised, be silent for the most part, or if you speak, say only what is necessary and in a few words. This isn't a call to become antisocial, but a profound reminder that our speech should be intentional, valuable, and measured, a direct extension of our self-discipline. This practice of verbal restraint is inextricably linked to the four cardinal virtues of Stoicism: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Choosing to remain silent when a complaint is on the tip of your tongue is an act of wisdom. You recognize that complaining does not change the circumstance and only saps your energy. It is an act of courage. It takes strength to sit with discomfort rather than vocalize it to seek sympathy. It is an act of justice. You avoid burdening others with your minor grievances. And above all, it is the very embodiment of temperance, the virtue of self-control and moderation. Each time you successfully withhold a negative or unnecessary comment, you are not just avoiding a conversation, you are actively strengthening your virtuous character. You are building the resilience to handle life's inconveniences and challenges internally, without requiring external validation or a platform to vent. This internal fortitude is the ultimate goal, transforming you into someone who is unshakable not because they ignore problems, but because they have developed the inner resources to process them without needing to vocalize every single frustration. Consider a mundane yet universal example. You're stuck in terrible traffic, running late for an important appointment. The automatic, undisciplined response is to complain aloud, to curse the other drivers, to lament your terrible luck, and to list all the reasons why this is a catastrophe. This reaction, however, changes nothing about the traffic. It only serves to elevate your own stress levels and likely the anxiety of anyone else in the car with you. Now imagine the Stoic alternative. You take a deep breath and consciously choose restraint. You do not voice the complaint. You acknowledge the situation is outside your control, and you redirect your focus to what is within your control: your breathing, your attitude, and perhaps using the time to listen to an audiobook or simply gather your thoughts. By avoiding the complaint, you have done more than just stay quiet. You have embodied resilience. You have demonstrated to yourself that you can handle frustration with grace, and that your peace of mind is not dependent on perfect external conditions. This small, daily victory of restraint compounds over time, building a character that remains steady and composed even when the world outside is chaotic. The Roman poet Publilius Syrus, whose writings were admired by the Stoics, captured this idea perfectly when he wrote, "I have often regretted my speech, never my silence." This simple maxim holds a universe of wisdom. We can all recall moments where a hastily spoken word sparked an argument, a piece of gossip damaged a relationship, or a needless excuse undermined our credibility. It is far more difficult to recall a moment where we truly regretted choosing to say nothing. Silence is a safe harbor. It protects us from the consequences of our own impulsivity and preserves our integrity. It allows us to act from a place of considered intention rather than fleeting emotion. This discipline is a continuous practice, a muscle that must be exercised daily in countless small interactions. It's the choice not to correct someone when the correction is unimportant, the decision not to interrupt when someone else is speaking, the willpower not to make an excuse for a minor oversight, and instead simply take responsibility. So let's bring this profound discipline into your day with a single, powerful question. What one thing can you choose not to say today? Perhaps it's the complaint about the weather as you walk into the office, a comment that would only reinforce a negative mindset in you and those who hear it. Maybe it's the sarcastic remark during a meeting that would get a cheap laugh but might subtly undermine a colleague. It could be the needless excuse for why a task isn't finished, when a simple, "I'm working on it and will have it to you by this afternoon," would be more honest and effective. Identify that one utterance and make a conscious, virtuous pact with yourself to hold it back. In that moment of restraint, you will feel a quiet surge of self-mastery. You are no longer a slave to your impulses. You are the author of your words and, by extension, the architect of your character. This is how the Stoic discipline of restraint transforms ordinary life into an extraordinary practice of self-development, one unspoken word at a time. From Roman emperors to modern CEOs, the truly impactful leaders throughout history have consistently understood that their authority is not measured by the volume of their voice, but by the weight of their presence, a presence often most powerfully communicated through a composed and deliberate silence. This is not the silence of indecision or aloofness, but a conscious, strategic practice rooted in the Stoic ideal of leading by example rather than by decree. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the greatest exemplar of a philosopher king, embodied this principle completely. Despite ruling the vast Roman Empire at the height of its power, his personal writings reveal a man of profound humility who constantly reminded himself to listen more than he spoke, to observe rather than react, and to lead from a place of inner quietude. He wrote, "The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like that." A powerful reminder that a leader's true strength is shown not in retaliatory speeches or micromanaging commands, but in the quiet dignity of their actions and the space they create for others to step forward and contribute. This philosophy of quiet leadership stands in stark contrast to the stereotypical image of the charismatic, always-on executive who dominates every meeting. The Stoic leader knows that constant talking can often be a mask for insecurity, a need to prove one's value and control. True confidence, however, is quiet. It is the assurance that comes from knowing your own competence and values so deeply that you feel no compulsion to constantly affirm them verbally. This kind of leader inspires confidence in others precisely because they are not seeking it for themselves. Their calm silence in the face of a crisis communicates not panic or uncertainty, but a deep-seated stability that assures everyone else that the situation is manageable. They understand that when a leader speaks less, their words carry far greater significance. A single, well-considered piece of guidance offered after a period of attentive listening will be absorbed and acted upon with much more seriousness than a torrent of ongoing instructions that eventually just become background noise for their team. Consider the case study of a modern project manager facing a stalled initiative. The team is frustrated, deadlines are slipping, and the weekly meeting has devolved into a cycle of complaints and finger-pointing. A directive leader might respond by taking over, loudly reasserting the plan and assigning forceful new mandates, but a leader versed in the Stoic art of silence would take a different path. They might begin the next meeting by simply stating the problem and then falling quiet, creating a space of uncomfortable but productive silence. They would truly listen, to every concern and idea without interruption or immediate judgment. This act of silent listening does several powerful things at once. First, it makes every team member feel genuinely heard, which immediately lowers defenses and builds psychological safety. Second, it transfers the responsibility for solving the problem back to the collective intelligence of the group, empowering them and fostering ownership. And third, it allows the leader to gather unvarnished data about the real obstacles before offering a solution. The manager's silence is not an absence of leadership. It is the very mechanism through which they facilitate clarity, collaboration, and ultimately, a more resilient and effective resolution born from the team itself. The power of this approach is captured beautifully in a quote from the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, whose Taoist principles remarkably align with Stoic thought on leadership. A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, "We did it ourselves." This is the ultimate goal of quiet leadership, to cultivate an environment where people are empowered to think for themselves, to take initiative, and to feel a deep sense of ownership over their collective success. The leader's silence is the fertile ground in which this autonomy and confidence can grow. It is a humble leadership that seeks not personal glory, but the growth and achievement of the whole team. So, how could intentionally embracing silence make you a better leader, whether you're leading a Fortune 500 company, a small department, or even just your own family? It might begin by consciously reducing your speaking share in meetings by 25%, using that time instead to observe group dynamics and listen for the underlying concerns hidden beneath the surface of what's being said. It could mean resisting the urge to immediately provide the answer when a problem is presented, and instead responding with a thoughtful pause and then an open-ended question like, "What are your thoughts on the best path forward?" This simple shift transforms you from a source of answers into a catalyst for critical thinking. Ultimately, leading with silence is about trusting your people enough to let them find their own voices, and trusting yourself enough to know that your influence is not diminished by listening, but is immeasurably deepened by it. How noisy is your mind? Beyond the external world of notifications and conversations, there exists an internal landscape that is often even more chaotic, a constant stream of thoughts, worries, plans, and replays of past conversations that can feel utterly inescapable. This is the background static of modern consciousness, and the Stoics identified it as one of the greatest obstacles to living a life of clarity and purpose. Cultivating inner silence, therefore, is not about creating a void within yourself, but about intentionally quieting this internal chatter to access a deeper, more reliable source of wisdom and calm. It is the practice of turning down the volume on your own mental noise so that you can finally hear the subtle, guiding voice of your own reason and intuition. This inner quietude was considered by philosophers like Seneca to be the essential foundation for all sound judgment and virtuous action, because you cannot make clear decisions in the midst of a mental storm. Seneca wrote extensively about the profound value of solitude and mental retreat, not as a form of escape from the world, but as a necessary method of strengthening the mind for its engagement with the world. In his moral letters to Lucilius, he advises, "You must retreat into yourself as much as possible. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." The process is mutual, for people learn while they teach. This retreat he speaks of is the conscious act of creating space for inner silence. He isn't suggesting we become hermits. He is urging us to build a daily practice of withdrawing from external and internal distractions to recalibrate our thoughts and reconnect with our core principles. For Seneca, this solitude was where he could examine his day, question his own reactions, and align his upcoming actions with his stated values, free from the distorting influence of outside opinions or his own passing emotions. He understood that a mind constantly buffeted by noise, both outer and inner, is a reactive mind, one that is easily swayed and difficult to trust. The practical application of this is more accessible than it might seem. You don't need a secluded cabin in the woods to find this stillness. You can cultivate it in the first few minutes of your morning. Consider a simple practice like starting your day with just 5 minutes of intentional silence. This isn't about achieving a perfect state of meditation or emptying your mind completely, which for most of us is an unrealistic goal. It is simply about creating a brief sanctuary of quiet before the demands of the day come rushing in. Sit comfortably, set a timer if it helps, and focus on the natural rhythm of your breath. When thoughts inevitably arise, and they will, gently acknowledge them without judgment and let them pass by like clouds in the sky, returning your focus to your breathing. This small daily ritual acts as a reset button for your nervous system. It trains your mind to become less reactive to the endless stream of thoughts, creating a small gap between a stimulus and your response. In that gap lies your freedom to choose. This practice of cultivating inner silence directly enhances your decision-making capabilities. When your mind is cluttered with anxiety about future outcomes or regret over past mistakes, any choice you make is filtered through that emotional static, leading to impulsive or fear-based decisions. A mind that has practiced stillness, however, can assess a situation with far greater clarity. It can distinguish between the facts of the circumstance and the noisy commentary of fear or desire. It allows you to access what the Stoics called the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty of your mind, which operates from logic and virtue rather than from primal impulse. The clarity found in silence is what allows you to see the wisest path forward, not just the easiest or most emotionally satisfying one. So let's bring this into your immediate reality. What distractions can you choose to silence, even temporarily, to finally hear yourself think? It might be the compulsive need to check your phone the moment you wake up, allowing the agendas of others to colonize your mind before you've even had a chance to form your own. It could be the background podcast or television show you constantly have on, using external noise to avoid confronting the sometimes uncomfortable quiet of your own company. Perhaps it's the internal distraction of multitasking, trying to think about 3 things at once and ultimately doing justice to none of them. Each of these distractions serves as a barrier between you and your own inner wisdom. By consciously choosing to silence them, even for a few minutes each day, you are not missing out on anything. You are making the most important investment possible, an investment in your own mental clarity, emotional stability, and your ability to navigate your life with the purposeful calm of a modern Stoic. Ever regretted something said in anger? That sharp retort, that personal jab, the sentence you wish you could grab out of the air the moment it leaves your mouth? We've all been there. In those heated moments, words act like sparks in a dry forest, instantly igniting a conflict that can rage out of control and leave lasting damage to our most important relationships. The Stoic approach to this universal human experience is not to fight fire with fire, but to strategically and virtuously employ silence as a firebreaker, a deliberate gap that stops the emotional blaze from spreading any further. This isn't about suppressing your feelings or letting others walk all over you. It is about recognizing that the temporary satisfaction of winning a point in an argument is almost never worth the long-term cost of losing trust, respect, or connection with someone you care about. Silence in this context is the ultimate tool of de-escalation, a conscious choice to protect the relationship from the collateral damage of your own unchecked emotions. This practice is deeply anchored in the teachings of Epictetus, who offered profoundly simple yet challenging advice on handling provocations. He stated, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." This is a revolutionary way to view conflict. It places the power and the responsibility squarely back in your own hands. The other person's words or actions are merely the external event, the trigger. It is your own judgment about that event, your decision to take the bait and become offended, that is the true source of the conflict. Epictetus therefore advises us to practice ignoring these provocations, not out of weakness, but out of a position of immense strength. By choosing not to engage, you are not running away from a fight. You are demonstrating that your inner peace and the health of the relationship are more valuable to you than the petty victory of having the last word. You are effectively saying, this topic and my need to be right about it is not more important than my connection to you. The Roman playwright and Stoic thinker Seneca echoes this sentiment with a powerful quote on harmony, advising, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. This delay is the intentional pause of silence. It is the vital space between the provocation and your response where reason has a chance to catch up to emotion. In that space, you can ask yourself the essential Stoic questions. Is this within my control? Is responding in kind true, necessary, and kind? Will this action align with my highest values? Almost invariably, the answer to these questions when you are angry is a resounding no. The words that want to erupt are rarely true in their exaggerated anger. They are almost never necessary, and they are almost never kind. Choosing silence allows you to act from your virtues instead of your vulnerabilities. Consider a classic domestic scenario. You've had an exhausting day at work, and you walk through the door to find that your partner has, once again, left a huge pile of dishes in the sink. The easy, automatic reaction is to immediately confront them, your voice tinged with frustration and accusation. I can't believe you left this mess for me again. Do I have to do everything around here? This opening volley, while it may feel justified in the moment, is virtually guaranteed to start a fight. It attacks the person's character, puts them on the defensive, and ensures the conversation will now be about your tone and their defensiveness rather than the actual dishes. Now imagine the Stoic alternative. You see the dishes, you feel the flash of anger, and then you consciously choose to walk away. You take a walk around the block. You go into another room and take 10 deep breaths. You simply decide to change your clothes first. This physical act of walking away is the embodiment of strategic silence. It is not passive-aggressive. It is a strategic retreat to regain your composure. After that pause, you can approach the situation calmly. Hey, I noticed the dishes piled up. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed tonight. Could we figure out a way to tackle this together? This response, born from silence, comes from a place of stating your own feeling and seeking a collaborative solution. It transforms a potential battlefield into a simple household negotiation, preserving the peace and respect in your relationship. This principle applies everywhere, from family dinners to online comment sections. Engaging with a troll who posts an inflammatory comment on your social media feed is a perfect example of unnecessary conflict. Your witty comeback might feel good for a second, but it only feeds their desire for a reaction and pulls you into a negative energy exchange that depletes you and entertains them. The Stoic, and indeed the wisest, response is the sheer, powerful silence of not replying at all. You deny them the engagement they crave, and you preserve your own energy and peace. You have not lost, you have chosen to win by not playing a game that has no virtuous outcome. So, take a moment to look back on your own history of relationships. Where could the simple, courageous act of silence have saved a connection from a fracture? Perhaps it was that political debate with a relative that spiraled into personal attacks, where a quiet change of subject could have maintained family harmony. Maybe it was a disagreement with a friend where you felt misunderstood, and instead of explaining your side again, choosing to simply listen to theirs would have dissolved the tension. Every time we withhold an angry word, a sarcastic comment, or a needless correction, we are not just avoiding an argument. We are making a proactive investment in the longevity and health of our connections with others. We are choosing to value the person over the problem, and in doing so, we build relationships that are resilient enough to withstand the occasional storm without breaking. While words inform, silence often convinces. We live in a culture that equates persuasion with a flood of compelling arguments, charismatic delivery, and winning debates. But the Stoics, particularly a thinker like Marcus Aurelius, understood a deeper truth about influence. True persuasion isn't about overwhelming someone with your point of view. It's about creating the conditions where they can discover the truth for themselves. and nothing creates that intellectual space more effectively than a well-placed, purposeful silence. This is the heart of Stoic rhetoric. It's not about the volume of your speech, but the substance behind it, and sometimes the most substantial thing you can offer is a quiet confidence that doesn't require constant verbal reinforcement. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this in his Meditations, focusing on the importance of meaningful and necessary communication over idle or boastful talk. He wrote, "Let no one ever hear you complaining about life in the court, not even to yourself. This extends to all communication. It's a reminder that our words should carry weight and purpose, and that often the most powerful message is sent not through a lengthy explanation, but through a silent demonstration of integrity, competence, or calm assurance." This concept finds a beautiful expression in the world of art. Consider a master painter who has just completed their magnum opus. They don't hang a lengthy essay next to the painting, explaining every brushstroke and its deep symbolic meaning. They simply hang the work and step back. The painting is left to communicate directly with the viewer, to evoke emotion, provoke thought, and tell its own story without any intermediary. The artist's silence is not an absence, it is an act of profound respect for both the work and the audience. It says, "I have poured my truth into this creation. Now I trust you to find your own truth within it." This silent invitation is far more persuasive than any artist's statement could ever be, because it makes the viewer an active participant in the creation of meaning. The persuasion happens not through rhetoric, but through a personal, visceral experience that feels uniquely discovered, not forcefully sold. This principle applies with incredible force in the realm of leadership and personal integrity. Imagine a leader in an organization who is faced with a crisis of confidence. Rumors are flying, and the team is looking for reassurance. One leader might respond with a flurry of emails, speeches, and promises, a torrent of words that can often come across as desperate or defensive. Another leader, guided by a more stoic approach, might choose a different path. They would, of course, address the situation clearly and directly, but they would then couple those necessary words with a consistent and calm demeanor. They wouldn't feel the need to constantly reassert their control or defend their position. Their silent, unwavering composure in the hallways, their attentive listening in meetings, and their focused action become their most persuasive argument for stability. Their silence communicates a deep, unshakable confidence that reassures everyone far more effectively than any pep talk ever could. It persuades people to believe in their leader not because of what they said, but because of who they are being in that moment. The power of silent persuasion also shines in moments of apology or accountability. We've all witnessed, or perhaps even performed, the overly verbose apology, packed with excuses, justifications, and long-winded explanations that ultimately dilute the core message of remorse. Contrast that with someone who simply says, "I was wrong and I am sorry," and then has the strength to fall silent. That silence which follows a sincere apology is where the real work of healing begins. It allows the other person to feel the full weight of the acknowledgement without being interrupted by your own need to feel better. It gives them the space to have their reaction, to feel their feelings, and to truly process your words. Your restraint from filling that space with noise is a powerful, non-verbal plea for forgiveness that is often more convincing than 1,000 elaborate excuses. It persuades by demonstrating that your regret is genuine enough that it doesn't require immediate validation. So, bring this idea into your own life for a moment. When has silence been your most compelling argument? Perhaps it was during a disagreement when you chose to stop defending your position and simply listened, and in doing so, you allowed the other person to hear the flaws in their own reasoning. Maybe it was when you received praise and instead of deflecting it with self-deprecating chatter, you accepted it with a simple, silent smile, allowing yourself to truly receive the compliment and allowing the giver to feel the full impact of their kindness. It could be in your work, where instead of boasting about your capabilities, you let the impeccable quality of your finished project do all the talking for you. In each of these cases, your silence was not empty, it was eloquent. It was a language of its own that communicated confidence, integrity, and respect far more profoundly than words ever could. It is in these quiet moments that we often find our greatest power to influence, not by speaking, but by trustingly and courageously allowing our actions and our presence to speak for us. Silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. We often rush through our days, moving from one task to the next, one conversation to another, without ever creating a moment of pause to process what's actually happening within and around us. The Stoics recognized that this constant motion is the enemy of wisdom, and they championed a powerful counter-practice, using intentional silence as a tool for deep, honest reflection. This isn't about idle quiet time. It's an active, disciplined process of turning inward to evaluate our actions, thoughts, and choices against the unwavering standard of our virtues. It's in these still moments that we can hear the quiet voice of our own reason, separate from the noise of external expectations and internal chatter, and realign ourselves with who we truly wish to be. This practice was a non-negotiable daily ritual for the most dedicated Stoics. Seneca, in particular, was a profound advocate for this kind of introspective silence. He meticulously practiced what he called his nightly review, a quiet time at the end of each day where he would retreat into stillness and mentally walk through the events that had transpired. He would ask himself tough questions. Where did I act in accordance with my principles? Where did I fall short? Was my anger justified, or was it a failure of judgment? Did I contribute something of value, or did I waste time on trivialities? He wrote about this in his moral letters, advising, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, aware of this habit that's now become mine, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said. I hide nothing from myself, I pass nothing by." This is the essence of Stoic reflection, a fearless and compassionate audit of the self, conducted not with self-flagellation, but with the clear-eyed goal of continuous improvement. The silence of the night provided the perfect container for this work, free from the distractions of the day, allowing him to distill lessons from his experiences and resolve to do better tomorrow. You don't need to wait until bedtime to harness this power. A profoundly simple yet transformative practice is to build a habit of pausing in silence before making any significant decision. We're often pressured to respond instantly, to give an answer immediately, to make a snap judgment. But what if you gave yourself the gift of just 60 seconds of pure, uninterrupted quiet before committing? Before you send that difficult email, pause in silence. Before you agree to a new commitment, pause in silence. Before you make a purchase that might be driven by impulse rather than need, pause in silence. In that brief window, you are not doing nothing. You are creating a sacred space for your deeper wisdom to surface. You are allowing the initial, reactive impulse, which is often driven by emotion, ego, or fear, to settle like sediment in water, so you can see the situation with clarity. This momentary silence acts as a buffer between stimulus and response, ensuring that your eventual action is a chosen one, aligned with your long-term goals and values, rather than a reflexive one you may later regret. This process of silent reflection is how we move from simply knowing Stoic philosophy to actually living it. It's the mechanism that turns abstract principles like courage, justice, and temperance into tangible behaviors. Reading about virtue is one thing. sitting in silence and honestly asking yourself if you were courageous in that difficult conversation, or if you acted with justice in that business deal, is where the real transformation occurs. That silent questioning is where theory meets practice. It's where you become your own most valuable teacher, gently guiding yourself back to your chosen path each time you stray. The answers you seek about how to handle a complex relationship, how to prioritize your time, or how to find more meaning in your work, they rarely come from consuming more external information. They emerge from the fertile ground of your own quiet contemplation, where you can finally hear your own intuition and reason speaking to you without competition. So, what truth might silence reveal to you if you gave it a chance? It might reveal that a goal you've been tirelessly pursuing is actually someone else's dream for you, not your own. It might show you that the source of your irritation with a loved one has less to do with their actions and more to do with an unmet need within yourself. It could help you see that the urgent task causing you so much anxiety is, in the grand scheme of your life, not important at all. The truths that emerge in silence are not always comfortable, but they are invariably liberating. They cut through the stories we tell ourselves and connect us with a deeper, more authentic reality. By regularly making space for this reflective silence, you are not withdrawing from the world. You are ensuring that when you do engage with it, you do so as the best, most conscious, and most virtuous version of yourself. Do you feel the need to constantly justify your choices, your actions, or even your very presence in a room? That compulsion to over-explain ourselves, to provide a lengthy backstory for every decision, is often a telltale sign that we are seeking something from others that we haven't yet found within ourselves: validation. This relentless need for external approval is a heavy chain that the Stoics sought to break, and they identified a powerful key to that freedom: the disciplined restraint of silence. Epictetus, who understood the dynamics of power and powerlessness better than most, confronted this directly. He taught that a person's worth is not contingent on the opinions of others. His famous dictum, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone,' is more than just witty retort. It is a profound lesson in self-contained worth. It means that your sense of security must be an internal fortress, built on your own virtues and actions, not a fragile structure that requires constant maintenance through the approval of everyone you meet. When you truly internalize that you do not need others to sanction your existence, the desperate urge to explain yourself simply evaporates. This shift from explaining to simply being is one of the most powerful applications of the speechless strategy. Over-explaining is essentially a form of verbal pleading. It subtly communicates a lack of confidence, as if your own reasons aren't valid unless they are understood and endorsed by the other person. It hands over your power, making your inner state dependent on their reaction. Conversely, silence, when used strategically after a statement or decision, projects an unshakable aura of assurance. It communicates that you have already given the matter sufficient thought, that you stand by your position, and that you feel no anxiety about whether others agree with it. This isn't arrogance, it is quiet competence. It tells the world that you are comfortable in your own skin and trust your own judgment implicitly. This kind of silent confidence is magnetically persuasive because it is so rare. People are instinctively drawn to those who seem self-possessed and are far more likely to trust someone who doesn't feel the need to constantly prove their trustworthiness. Consider a scenario in the workplace. An employee submits a detailed proposal to their manager. The manager scans it quickly and asks, "Why did you choose this approach over the standard method?" The employee, feeling a pang of insecurity, might launch into a long, defensive explanation filled with justifications, data points, and preemptive apologies for any perceived shortcomings. This reaction, while thorough, can inadvertently plant seeds of doubt in the manager's mind. The very act of over-explaining can signal that the employee themselves isn't fully confident in their work. Now imagine the Stoic alternative. The employee pauses, meets the manager's gaze calmly, and says, "I believe it's the most efficient path to our goal based on the current constraints." The key benefits are outlined on page 2, and then they stop talking. They allow that concise answer to hang in the air. This quiet confidence does two things. It demonstrates respect for the manager's time by being direct, and it shows a deep belief in the quality of their own work. The manager is now far more likely to be persuaded, not by a flood of data, but by the employee's evident self-assurance. The trust earned in that silent moment is far greater than anything a 5-minute monologue could have achieved. The Roman poet and satirist Juvenal captured this spirit of self-reliance perfectly when he wrote, "Never does nature say one thing and wisdom another." This suggests that when we are aligned with our own rational nature and virtues, our actions are their own justification. We don't need to add a layer of verbal defense because our character and our work should speak for themselves. This is the core of resisting the urge to explain. It is about moving from a state of seeking permission to a state of owning your authority. It is the understanding that you are the final judge of your own intentions and efforts, and that while feedback can be valuable, your self-worth must never be held hostage to it. So what if you stopped explaining and started being? What if you made a conscious practice today of offering one less justification for your choices? This doesn't mean being rude or uncommunicative. It means trusting that a simple "I decided this was best" or "I prefer it this way" is enough. It means allowing your work to stand on its own merits without a narrated defense. It means sitting comfortably in the silence that follows your statement, without rushing to fill it with nervous chatter designed to win someone over. Each time you do this, you are making a powerful deposit into your own account of self-worth. You are reinforcing the Stoic truth that you are enough, your judgment is sound, and your peace does not require the unanimous consent of the committee. You are not being silent because you have nothing to say. You are being silent because you have already said enough. In negotiation, he who speaks first often loses. This isn't just a clever maxim from the world of high-stakes deal-making. It's a principle deeply aligned with the Stoic virtues of patience, precise timing, and disciplined observation. The frantic pace of modern business conditions us to fill every moment with sound, to counter offers instantly, and to justify our positions with a flood of words. Yet this very urgency often becomes our greatest weakness, revealing our anxieties, our bottom lines, and our eagerness to please before we've fully understood the landscape of the discussion. The Stoic negotiator understands that true power isn't demonstrated by rapid-fire responses, but by the confident, intentional use of silence. This quiet restraint creates a vacuum of information that the other party, driven by their own discomfort or eagerness, will instinctively rush to fill, often revealing their true priorities, their pressures, and their concessions without you ever having to ask. Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on the critical importance of timing and patience, understanding that a virtuous action taken at the wrong moment could be as ineffective as inaction. He advised himself to act only when the time was right, writing, "When you are offended at any man's fault, immediately turn to yourself and reflect in what way you too have erred." We can apply this wisdom to negotiation by turning our focus inward during the silent pauses. Instead of anxiously waiting for your turn to talk, use that quiet space to observe not just what is being said, but how it's being said, the body language, the subtle hesitations. This is active, strategic patience. It's not passive waiting. It's a period of intense data collection where you are gathering the crucial intelligence needed to make your next move, not from a place of reaction, but from a place of reasoned strategy. This tactical use of silence finds a powerful advocate in the words of the early 20th century diplomat and Nobel Peace Prize winner Henry Kissinger, who once noted, "The task of the leader is to get his people from where they are to where they have not been." This journey often requires the silent patience to allow others to arrive at conclusions on their own terms. Consider a classic business negotiation over a contract. You've presented your offer, the other party reviews it and says, "We can't possibly agree to that price." The inexperienced negotiator's immediate impulse is to jump in, to justify the cost, to explain the value, to start making concessions. But the negotiator trained in Stoic restraint simply remains silent. They maintain comfortable eye contact and let that silence expand. In the face of this quiet confidence, the other party will almost always feel compelled to break the tension. They might add, "Because our budget for this quarter is already stretched," or "Unless you can offer us an extended payment term," or "It's 20% higher than your competitor's bid." In that single, unforced sentence, they have just handed you the key to unlocking the entire deal. Their real constraint isn't the value of your offer, but their cash flow, their timing, or their need for a competitive benchmark. Your silence didn't just save you from talking. It compelled them to reveal their actual position, giving you the precise information you need to structure a winning counter-proposal. This principle operates with even greater force in the world of diplomacy, where a single misplaced word can escalate into an international incident. Skilled diplomats are masters of the deliberate pause. They understand that after a contentious point is made, the first person to speak is often the one who blinks first, showing their hand or their willingness to compromise. By comfortably inhabiting the silence, they demonstrate national resolve and unshakable patience, forcing the other side to either reaffirm their hardline stance, which can reveal inflexibility, or to soften their position. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back their own aggression or uncertainty, and often causing them to reconsider their approach. It is a non-verbal show of strength that says, "I am so confident in my position that I feel no need to fill this space with nervous chatter or premature concessions." So how could this powerful tool of strategic silence improve your very next negotiation, whether it's discussing a salary, settling a contract, or even deciding on a family vacation? It begins by reframing your goal. Your objective is not to talk the other party into agreement, but to listen and observe them into revelation. After you state your position or ask a pivotal question, consciously clamp down on the urge to immediately follow up. Count to 10 in your head, breathe, make a note on your pad. Allow the weight of the discussion to settle fully on the other side of the table. Pay acute attention to what they offer to break that silence, because what they say next will almost always be more truthful and more revealing than anything they've said before. Your quiet patience, rooted in Stoic self-assurance, will not only provide you with better information, but will also project a formidable confidence that can fundamentally shift the balance of power in the room, turning your silence into your most persuasive advantage. When was the last time you intentionally spent an extended period alone with nothing but your own thoughts for company? Not just physically alone while scrolling through a screen or listening to a podcast, but truly alone in a quiet space, free from the constant input and entertainment the modern world offers to avoid this very experience. For many, the idea of such solitude is unsettling, something to be avoided. But the Stoics reframed this not as a state of loneliness to be feared, but as a vital training ground for the mind, a purposeful retreat where resilience and self-reliance are forged in the quiet. This deliberate solitude is the practice of inner silence made tangible, a conscious choice to disconnect from the voices of the world so you can finally hear and strengthen your own. Seneca, in his profound letters to his friend Lucilius, placed immense value on this practice of seeking one's own company. He saw it as the ultimate test and developer of self-sufficiency, writing, "You must become your own friend first before you can become a friend to others." This is the core of the Stoic view on solitude. It is not about rejecting society, but about building a stable and virtuous self that is not dependent on external validation or constant distraction for its worth. Seneca believed that a person who cannot bear their own company, who is constantly seeking outside stimulation, is ultimately running from themselves. He advised making a practice of regular retreats into solitude to confront this discomfort head-on, to be able to be with yourself, arguing that this is how we learn to be content with who we are, without the props and performances we use in social life. In these quiet moments, we are forced to sit with our own judgments, our fears, and our desires, and in doing so, we learn to manage them. This builds a resilience that is unshakable because its source is internal. It does not fluctuate with the opinions of others or the changing circumstances of external life. The benefits of this practice are beautifully captured in a sentiment often attributed to the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who noted, "Ordinary men hate solitude. But the master makes use of it, embracing his aloneness, realizing he is one with the whole universe." This echoes the Stoic idea that in turning inward, we don't find isolation, but a connection to a larger rational cosmos. We discover that we are enough. History is filled with thinkers and creators who leveraged solitude for monumental clarity. Consider the example of Sir Isaac Newton. During the Great Plague of London in 1665, Cambridge University sent its students home. Newton, then a young scholar, retreated to his family estate in Woolsthorpe for nearly 2 years of intense isolation. It was in this period of quiet contemplation, free from the distractions of academic life and city society, that he developed his theories on calculus, optics, and the laws of motion and gravity that would forever change our understanding of the physical world. While an apple may not have actually fallen on his head, the story persists as a perfect metaphor. It was in the fertile silence of solitude that a profound insight was able to drop into his conscious mind, uninterrupted. His isolation wasn't a barrier to his work, it was the essential condition that made his deepest breakthroughs possible. This doesn't require a plague or a countryside manner. The practice of embracing solitude can be integrated into daily life. It might begin with a commitment to a 20-minute daily walk without headphones, allowing your mind to wander and process without a soundtrack. It could be sitting in a quiet room with a journal, not to write a to-do list but to converse with yourself on paper, asking questions like, "What am I avoiding?" Or, "What truly matters to me beyond what others expect?" These moments of self-prescribed solitude are where you practice relying on your own resources for clarity and comfort. You learn to entertain yourself, to challenge yourself, and to sit with difficult emotions without immediately reaching for a phone or another person to numb them. This builds the self-reliance the Stoics prized, the ability to be your own source of strength and stability. So, ask yourself with genuine curiosity, not judgment, what might you discover in the quiet company of just yourself? You might uncover a well of creativity you didn't know existed as your mind, freed from constant consumption, begins to generate its own ideas. You might stumble upon a solution to a problem that has been nagging you as the silence allows for unexpected connections to form. You will almost certainly confront aspects of yourself you typically keep busy to avoid, perhaps insecurities, regrets, or unmet aspirations. And this is where the real growth happens. By facing these things in solitude, you rob them of their power. You learn that you can handle them, that you can sit with discomfort and emerge unscathed, stronger, and more self-aware. You become the master of your inner world, and from that unshakable foundation, you can then engage the outer world with greater purpose, resilience, and authentic connection. Your peace is more important than winning every argument. This single Stoic principle reframes our entire relationship with criticism, transforming it from a battle to be won into a test of our own inner sovereignty. When we feel the sting of a critical remark, our ego's immediate, reflexive demand is to mount a defense, to correct the record, to prove our innocence or superiority. But this instinctual reaction hands over our emotional state to the whims of someone else's opinion, making our inner peace contingent on their approval, a fragile and exhausting way to live. The Stoic alternative is not to internalize the criticism or to simmer in silent resentment, but to practice a profound and strategic disengagement. It is the conscious choice to not play the game at all, thereby disarming the opponent by removing the very thing they need to sustain the conflict, your reaction. Epictetus, who understood power dynamics intimately, provided the ultimate framework for this practice. He drew a clear and liberating line between what is within our control and what is not. If someone criticizes you, he might say, that action is theirs to own. It is an external event entirely outside your control. Your opinion of their criticism, however, and your choice to be disturbed by it, that is 100% within your control. He taught that we are disturbed not by the things that happen to us, but by the views we take of them. Therefore, the most powerful response to criticism is often to simply ignore it, not out of cowardice, but from a position of immense strength and clarity. You are not ignoring the truth, you are ignoring the noise. You are making a calculated decision that your energy and peace are far too valuable to be spent on every person who has an opinion about you. This is the essence of what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but a state of being undisturbed by the passions and opinions of others, allowing you to remain focused on your own virtue and purpose. This philosophy is perfectly captured in a powerful quote from the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius. He wrote in his private journal, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This observation cuts to the heart of our dilemma. We prioritize the fleeting judgments of others over our own deep self-knowledge and values. To cultivate an indifference to opinion, then, is not to become cold or uncaring. It is to correct this imbalance. It is to grant your own self-assessment more weight and authority than the assessment of anyone else. It is to value your own character over your reputation, understanding that reputation is what others think you are, while character is what you truly are. A masterclass in this Stoic response can be seen in the public life of the Dalai Lama. For decades, he has faced a relentless campaign of criticism, misinformation, and personal attacks from powerful political entities. Yet his public demeanor is consistently one of calm compassion, and most strikingly, a refusal to engage in hostile rhetoric or public defensiveness. He does not hold press conferences to rebut every accusation. He does not lash out on social media. Instead, he remains focused on his core message of peace and human kindness. His silence in the face of direct provocation is not a sign of weakness or admission of guilt. It is a breathtaking display of inner security. It completely disarms the criticism by refusing to validate it with a response, and in the process, it elevates his own dignity and the moral authority of his position. He demonstrates that the most compelling answer to hatred is often not a counter-argument, but unwavering compassion and an unshakable commitment to one's own principles. Now bring this concept down from the global stage and into your own daily life. Imagine a colleague takes credit for your idea in a team meeting. The burning desire to immediately call them out, to list the evidence of your ownership, to expose them in front of everyone is almost overwhelming. This is the ego's demand for justice and validation, but pause for a stoic moment. What is within your control? You cannot control your colleague's lack of integrity. You cannot force others to believe you. What you can control is your response. A strategic silence followed later by a private, calm conversation with your boss where you simply state the facts without emotional charge is far more powerful and professional. It protects your dignity and demonstrates maturity. It shows that you are focused on the work and the truth, not on public drama. Your refusal to engage in a public confrontation actually strengthens your position and your character. So let's end with that pivotal personal question. How would your life change if you made a conscious practice of stopping the constant, internal and external defense of yourself? Imagine the mental energy you would reclaim, energy currently spent rehearsing arguments, ruminating on insults, and crafting explanations for people whose opinions ultimately do not define you. That energy could be redirected toward your creative projects, your deepest relationships, and your personal growth. Your sense of self would become rooted in an internal foundation of your own making, not in the shifting sands of external approval. You would move through the world with a new, quiet confidence, not because everyone likes you, but because you no longer need them to. The need to defend yourself would be replaced by the profound peace of knowing yourself, and that is an argument no one else can ever win. The best learners listen more than they speak. This isn't just a helpful tip for academic success. It's a profound educational principle rooted in the Stoic virtue of humility. True learning requires an open and receptive mind, a willingness to acknowledge that we do not already possess all the answers and that wisdom can come from any source at any time. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, constantly reminded himself of this vital truth. In his private meditations, he wrote, "If anyone can show me and prove to me that I am wrong in thought or deed, I will gladly change. I seek the truth which never yet hurt anybody. It is only persistence in self-delusion and ignorance which does harm." This is the ultimate expression of a teachable spirit, an emperor's admission that he is still a student of life, ready to listen and learn from anyone who can offer a clearer view of the truth. His silence was not a void, it was an active state of readiness to receive new understanding. This stands in stark contrast to the way many of us approach conversations, especially when we feel knowledgeable on a topic. We often listen not to understand, but to reload, to find the pause in the other person's speech where we can interject with our own opinion, our own story, our own piece of evidence that proves our intelligence. This is the ego's idea of learning, where the goal is not to absorb but to perform. The Stoic approach, however, flips this entirely. It sees speaking as the eventual outcome of learning, not the process of it. The process is silence. It is in the quiet, attentive space of listening that new information can be fully absorbed, compared against existing knowledge, and integrated into a deeper understanding. When we are busy formulating our response while the other person is still talking, we are only listening to the sound of our own thoughts, effectively building a wall between ourselves and the potential insight being offered. Consider the example of a medical student on their first clinical rotations. They enter the hospital brimming with textbook knowledge, eager to impress the attending physician with their diagnosis. One student immediately offers their analysis for every patient, speaking quickly to demonstrate their competence. another student chooses a different path. They stand back, they watch how the experienced doctor interacts with patients. They listen intently to the questions being asked and the subtle cues being observed. They absorb the rhythm of the ward. This second student speaks far less, but they learn infinitely more. They are not just learning facts, they are learning the art of medicine, the unspoken intuition, the diagnostic reasoning, the bedside manner that can never be captured in a textbook. Their silence is an act of deep respect for the mastery in the room, and it creates the mental space necessary for that mastery to transfer from the expert to the novice. Their humility makes them the ideal vessel for knowledge. This principle extends far beyond formal education into every aspect of our lives. In a business meeting, the person who speaks least often has the most comprehensive understanding of the room's dynamics and unspoken objections. In a relationship, the partner who listens without interrupting to defend themselves often hears the true need hidden beneath their loved one's words. In each case, silence is the fertile ground in which the seeds of understanding can grow without being trampled by the foot of our own haste to be heard. It is the ultimate tool for any apprentice in any field, because it positions you to receive the full, unvarnished lesson that the world is trying to teach. So let's turn this inward with a challenging yet liberating question. What could you learn today, this very week, if you made a conscious pact with yourself to speak less and listen more? Not in a way that makes you withdrawn, but in a way that makes you profoundly present. What hidden nuance in a friend's story might you finally catch? What piece of crucial feedback from a colleague might you actually hear for the first time, instead of instantly dismissing it? What subtle pattern in your own child's behavior might you observe that reveals their unspoken worry or excitement? When we choose to close our mouths, we open our minds to a world of detail and depth that was always there, waiting for our quiet attention. The greatest lessons are rarely shouted, they are whispered, and to hear them, we must first be still. Breathe before you speak. It's a Stoic habit that transforms raw emotion into reasoned response. This simple, physical act of taking a single, conscious breath creates a vital pocket of silence between the trigger and your reaction, a momentary sanctuary where you can reclaim control from your surging feelings. The Stoics didn't see this pause as a suppression of emotion, but as the essential space where virtue is chosen over impulse. It's in this quiet gap that we exercise what the ancients called prohersis, our faculty of conscious choice, ensuring our actions align with our values rather than our temporary passions. Seneca, the great Stoic statesman, was adamant about the dangers of letting emotion dictate our words. He warned in his essay on anger, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." He advised to postpone your reaction, to give the initial fiery wave of feeling time to recede so that the clearer waters of reason can rise. This delay is the practice of intentional silence, a disciplined restraint that prevents the countless regrets born from words spoken in heat. This connection between a physical breath and emotional control is more than philosophical advice. It's a neurological reality. When we encounter a perceived threat or a sharp criticism, our amygdala, the brain's alarm system, sounds the alert, flooding our body with stress hormones that prepare us to fight, flee, or freeze. This is the biological seat of that rash reaction. But the simple, deliberate act of taking a deep breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which acts as a brake on this stress response. It sends a signal to your body that you are safe, slowing your heart rate and calming your mind. That pause, that moment of silence, is literally the time it takes for your prefrontal cortex, the center of executive function and rational thought, to come back online and override the amygdala's emergency broadcast. You are not stopping emotion, you are allowing your biology the time to integrate emotion with wisdom. This is Stoicism in action, not as a denial of our humanity, but as its masterful orchestration. Consider a scenario many of us have faced. You've spent hours preparing a complex report for your team, and during the presentation, a colleague dismisses your entire approach with a sarcastic, "Did you even look at the data from last quarter?" The immediate, visceral reaction is one of white-hot anger and humiliation. Every fiber of your being wants to fire back with a cutting remark about their own past mistakes, to defend your work and put them in their place. This is the path of the uncontrolled reaction, and it leads directly to a professional rift, a ruined meeting, and hours of later regret. Now, imagine the Stoic alternative. Upon hearing the comment, you feel the heat rise to your face, but instead of speaking, you consciously close your mouth. You look down at your notes and you take one slow, deep breath. In that 3-second window of silence, something profound happens. The initial shock subsides enough for you to remember your own goal for this meeting, to secure buy-in for the project, not to win a personal argument. You might even recall that this colleague has been under immense personal pressure lately. Your response, when it finally comes, is calm and measured. "I did review the past data, and I'd be very interested to hear your specific concerns about how it connects to my recommendations. Perhaps we can discuss the details after the meeting to ensure we're aligned." The silence didn't make you weak, it made you strategic. It prevented a public confrontation, demonstrated professional poise under pressure, and kept the focus on the work instead of the ego. The virtue that is being exercised in this pause is temperance, one of the 4 cardinal Stoic virtues. A powerful quote that encapsulates this comes from the Roman poet Ovid, who, though not a Stoic himself, perfectly captured the spirit of this discipline. Govern your passions, otherwise they will govern you. Temperance is this governance, not the eradication of passion, but its wise and virtuous management. It is the ability to feel anger without becoming wrathful, to feel fear without becoming cowardly, to feel desire without becoming greedy. The pause is the practical mechanism of this governance. It is the moment you step between the feeling and the action to ask the Stoic questions. Is this reaction true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Does it serve my higher purpose? More often than not, the answer, guided by a moment of silence, will lead you away from regret and toward a response you can be proud of long after the emotion has faded. So how can this simple practice of a purposeful pause truly transform your emotional responses? It shifts your entire mode of operation from reactive to responsive. You are no longer a puppet whose strings are pulled by every external comment and internal feeling. Instead, you become the author of your actions. Each time you successfully breathe through an urge to lash out, you are not just avoiding a single mistake. You are strengthening the neural pathways of self-control and weakening the hold of your impulsive reactions. You are building a reputation for unflappable composure. You are teaching people that they cannot easily provoke you, which in turn often discourages future provocations. Most importantly, you are gifting yourself the profound peace that comes from knowing your actions are a reflection of your character, not your circumstances. The pause is a small, daily rebellion against the chaos of the modern world, a reclaiming of your inner citadel, one conscious breath at a time. True strength doesn't need to announce itself. In a world that often mistakes volume for valor and chatter for capability, this Stoic truth stands as a powerful corrective. We've been culturally conditioned to believe that influence is exerted through speech, that leadership requires a constant stream of direction, and that to be quiet is to be passive or disengaged. This is a profound misunderstanding of where real power originates. Stoicism reframes strength not as an external performance for others, but as an internal fortress of self-knowledge and unshakable principle. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own value so deeply that you feel no compulsion to prove it to anyone else. This inner security allows you to listen more than you speak, to observe without immediately reacting, and to act from a place of deliberate choice rather than a need for approval. Your strength becomes a quiet, radiating presence rather than a noisy demand for attention. Marcus Aurelius, ruling the vast Roman Empire from the epicenter of power and pageantry, constantly reminded himself of this vital distinction. His private meditations reveal a man who cultivated a profound inner stillness amidst the external chaos. He wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." This simple line is a masterclass in quiet strength. It's the mental discipline of refusing to be provoked, of choosing not to escalate, of understanding that your peace is a higher form of power than winning a petty argument. His authority wasn't derived from the volume of his decrees, but from the depth of his character and the consistency of his virtue. He didn't need to trumpet his accomplishments or dominate every conversation because his sense of worth was internally generated. This is the essence of Stoic fortitude, a resilience that is quiet, deep, and entirely self-sufficient. The sentiment is echoed powerfully by the Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu, who observed, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." This is the strategic application of silent strength. It is the understanding that the most effective victory is often achieved not through a loud, costly confrontation, but through patience, positioning, and psychological composure that makes conflict unnecessary. The strongest person in the room is frequently the one who can absorb tension without reflecting it back, who can withstand provocation without needing to retaliate, and who understands that sometimes the most powerful move is to simply not play the game at all. This kind of strength is economical, efficient, and incredibly formidable because it cannot be easily manipulated or drawn into battles it does not wish to fight. History offers numerous examples of leaders whose quiet demeanor belied a tremendous inner resolve. Consider the leadership of President Calvin Coolidge, known as Silent Cal. In an era before the 24-hour news cycle, his restrained communication style was sometimes mistaken for aloofness or a lack of vision. Yet, his quiet perseverance and fiscal discipline guided the United States through a period of significant economic growth and stability. His famous quote, "I have never been hurt by anything I didn't say," is a perfectly Stoic maxim. It reveals a man who understood that most words are unnecessary and that ill-considered speech often creates more problems than it solves. His strength was in his restraint, in his ability to think deeply before acting, and in his refusal to be drawn into every political squabble. He led not with charismatic oration, but with quiet, consistent action. This principle is not confined to politics. It is equally potent in our personal and professional lives. In a typical office environment, there is often one person who speaks constantly in meetings, dominating the conversation to ensure their ideas are heard and their presence is felt. Contrast this with a colleague who speaks infrequently, but when they do, their contributions are invariably insightful, well-considered, and impactful. This person's silence is not a void, it is a period of active observation and synthesis. Their quiet confidence commands a different kind of respect. People instinctively lean in when they speak because their words carry the weight of prior thought. Their strength is demonstrated through the quality of their contribution, not the quantity of their airtime. They understand that those who are secure in their abilities do not need to constantly perform them. So let's turn this powerful lens onto our own behavior. In your own life, where have you unconsciously equated noise with strength? Do you feel a pang of anxiety in a conversation lull, rushing to fill it with words for fear of being perceived as unintelligent or uninformed. Do you believe that to be a leader, you must be the most vocal person in the room, constantly directing and opining? This reflection isn't about judging yourself, but about uncovering a hidden assumption that may be draining your energy and undermining your authentic presence. True strength is not about dominating the space around you. It is about being so complete within yourself that your presence naturally expands to fill the room without you ever having to say a word. It is the quiet assurance of the deep-rooted tree that does not need to shout about its strength to the wind. What isn't said often holds more power than the loudest proclamation. This isn't just a clever turn of phrase, it's a fundamental principle of human psychology. Our minds are naturally drawn to puzzles, to gaps in information, to the unknown. When someone is selectively silent, when they don't feel the need to explain every action or reveal every thought, they create a vacuum of curiosity that others instinctively rush to fill. This is where your perceived value begins to rise, not through self-promotion, but through the intriguing power of restraint. In a world of endless personal broadcasting, the person who shares less stands out precisely because they break the pattern. They force others to lean in, to listen more closely, and to actively wonder about their motives, their capabilities, and their depth. This calculated mystery isn't about being deceptive or secretive. It's about understanding that your full value is best revealed gradually, through action and result, rather than announced in a desperate bid for attention. This approach to self-presentation is deeply Stoic, finding a powerful advocate in the teachings of Epictetus. He consistently warned his students against the cheap currency of external validation, understanding that the need for constant attention is a form of slavery to other people's opinions. He advised, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and dull for the moment. This is the very heart of creating mystery through humility. It is the willingness to be temporarily underestimated, to forego the immediate ego boost of being the center of attention, in order to build a foundation of genuine, lasting respect. When you are not desperate to prove your intelligence or worth in every interaction, you create space for your actions to speak for themselves, and those actions always carry far more weight than your words ever could. Your silence becomes a testament to your self-sufficiency, signaling that your sense of worth is internally generated and not for sale to the highest bidder of praise. The wisdom of restraint is beautifully captured in a timeless quote from the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who said, "He who knows does not speak, he who speaks does not know." This isn't a literal command to never talk, but a profound observation about the relationship between depth and noise. Those who are truly confident in their knowledge or skills feel no urgency to constantly display them. They understand that true mastery is demonstrated through execution, not explanation. Their quiet assurance suggests a deep well of competence that has no need for superficial validation, making others naturally curious to learn more about them and what they know. This aura of quiet capability is infinitely more attractive and influential than the boasts of someone who must tell you how important they are. We can see this principle masterfully at work in the art of storytelling. Consider any great novel or film. The most compelling characters are rarely the ones who explain their entire backstory and motivations in a single monologue. They are the ones with secrets, with hidden depths, with unspoken pasts that are only hinted at through their actions and choices. The storyteller deliberately withholds information to build suspense and engagement, knowing that our imagination will always conjure something more intriguing than any explicit detail could provide. This same technique applies to personal branding, whether you are an artist, an entrepreneur, or a leader. An artist doesn't need to explain the deep meaning behind every brushstroke. they let the work itself provoke thought and emotion in the viewer. A visionary founder might focus on sharing their product's transformative results rather than every step of their difficult journey, allowing the outcome to generate its own compelling narrative. In each case, strategic silence creates a halo of intrigue that draws people in and makes them active participants in discovering your value. So, how might this intentional cultivation of mystery serve your own personal and professional goals? It could transform a job interview from a simple question and answer session into a more engaging dialogue, where you answer questions thoughtfully and completely, but without volunteering every single accomplishment unsolicited, allowing the interviewer to become curious and ask to learn more. It could elevate your leadership presence, where instead of micromanaging with constant commentary, you offer clear direction and then step back, creating space for your team to wonder about your strategic vision and to rise to the challenge of meeting it. In your social life, it might mean sharing less about your plans and ambitions on public platforms, so that your next achievement lands with the power of a delightful surprise rather than as an expected update. Mystery isn't about hiding who you are. It's about revealing your depth in layers at the right time to an audience that has been primed by their own curiosity to truly appreciate it. In a world of constant talk, the quietest person often stands out precisely because they break the predictable pattern. We've all been in those meetings or social gatherings where it feels like a verbal free-for-all, with everyone competing for airtime, eager to be heard and to demonstrate their value. In this noisy arena, the individual who chooses to listen more and speak less doesn't fade into the background. They become a focal point of intrigue and perceived depth. This isn't about being shy or disengaged. It is a strategic, stoic practice of mindfulness in group dynamics, a conscious decision to prioritize understanding over being understood, and to ensure that when you do contribute, your words carry significant weight because they are rare and well considered. Seneca offered profound guidance on this very idea, advising us to focus on the quality of our participation rather than the quantity. He warned against the emptiness of frivolous talk, suggesting that our speech should be purposeful and measured. In his moral letters, he writes, "Avoid shabby and cheerless talk, and also everything that is boastful." He expands on this by encouraging meaningful contribution, stating that we should speak only when we are sure that the words we are about to utter are truer than silence would be. This is the cornerstone of thoughtful participation. It means that before you speak, you perform a quick internal Stoic audit. Is what I am about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it an improvement upon the simple, powerful act of saying nothing? If the answer to any of these is no, then the virtuous, and indeed the more influential, choice is to remain silent. This discipline ensures that your contributions are consistently valuable, elevating your presence from being just another voice in the crowd to being a voice worth waiting for. The practical application of this is beautifully simple yet transformative. Make it a rule to listen first to understand the room. When you enter a meeting or a party, resist the immediate pressure to perform. Instead, shift into a mode of active observation. Pay attention to the spoken and unspoken dynamics at play. Who holds influence? What are the underlying concerns that haven't been directly stated? What is the emotional temperature of the group? This initial period of silent observation is not passive. It is an intensive data-gathering mission. You are downloading the context necessary to make any future contribution perfectly relevant and impactful. By understanding the room's unspoken needs and tensions, you can position your eventual comments to address the core of the issue, resonate with the group's true concerns, and demonstrate a level of empathy and insight that immediately sets you apart. Consider the difference between two colleagues in a brainstorming session. The first, eager to impress, jumps in immediately with the first idea that comes to mind. It's a decent idea, but it's offered in a vacuum without addressing the budget constraints the team lead had mentioned in an email earlier. The second colleague spends the first 10 minutes listening. They hear the lead's subtle reiteration of the budget concern. They notice a junior member's hesitant body language when a technically complex idea is proposed, and they absorb all the various suggestions. When they finally speak, their contribution is a synthesis. They say, building on the idea for a new feature and keeping the budget constraints in mind, what if we utilized the existing platform in a novel way? This would address the technical feasibility concern and stay within our resources. This comment doesn't just add a new idea, it solves multiple unspoken problems at once. It demonstrates strategic thinking, empathy, and a holistic understanding that the first, quicker speaker completely missed. The person who spoke last didn't just contribute, they led the conversation to a higher level. This approach transforms you from a mere participant into a strategic observer and a valued synthesizer. Your silence becomes a tool of precision, allowing you to craft interventions that are not just heard but deeply felt and remembered. You are no longer adding to the noise, you are providing the signal. The power of speaking last is that it allows you to have the final, synthesizing word, to be the one who connects the dots and moves the group toward consensus and action. It is a position of quiet authority that is earned through discipline and deep listening, not demanded through volume or frequency. So the next time you find yourself in a group setting, feeling that familiar anxiety to speak up, ask yourself a different question. What could I gain? What influence could I wield? What deeper understanding could I achieve if I made the conscious choice to be the one who speaks last? Silence is a balm for the overwhelmed mind. In our non-stop world, the constant barrage of notifications, deadlines, and social obligations doesn't just drain our energy, it fractures our attention and pulls us away from a fundamental Stoic goal, achieving a state of inner tranquility. This isn't about escaping reality, but about finding a center of calm within it, a quiet citadel from which we can observe the chaos without being consumed by it. The Stoics understood that this mental clarity wasn't a lucky accident. It was a disciplined practice, and intentional silence was one of its most powerful tools. Marcus Aurelius, who bore the immense weight of leading an empire, constantly returned to this theme in his private writings. He sought to cultivate an inner stillness that was impervious to external turmoil, reminding himself that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. By deliberately retreating into moments of quiet, we can choose which colors, which thoughts and impressions we allow to dye our souls, preventing the hectic outside world from staining our inner peace with its frantic pace. This pursuit of mental clarity through silence finds a beautiful expression in a quote from the Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who said, "Silence is essential." We need silence just as much as we need air, just as much as plants need light. This sentiment perfectly aligns with the Stoic view. Silence isn't a luxury, it's a nutrient for the mind. It's the necessary space where our thoughts can settle, where the sediment of anxiety and distraction slowly drifts to the bottom, leaving the waters of our consciousness clear and still. In this clarity, we can see our priorities more sharply, distinguish between what is within our control and what is not, and respond to challenges from a place of reasoned choice rather than panicked reaction. This is how silence heals. It doesn't remove life's pressures, but it gives us the space to build the resilience needed to withstand them without breaking. We can see this healing power at work all around us if we know where to look. Consider the profound sense of peace that often descends during a walk through an old-growth forest. The only sounds are the crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant call of a bird, and the gentle rustle of wind in the canopy high above. There is no Wi-Fi, no advertising, no demand for your immediate response. In that natural cathedral of quiet, the frantic chatter of the mind begins to slow down. The problems that seemed insurmountable at your desk often shrink to a manageable size when viewed against the timeless backdrop of ancient trees and a vast sky. This isn't merely poetic, it's physiological. Studies have shown that time spent in quiet, natural environments can lower cortisol levels, reduce heart rate, and calm the nervous system. Nature's silence provides a reset for our overloaded brains, offering a direct experience of the Stoic ideal of existing in harmony with a rational and orderly cosmos. Similarly, the growing popularity of silent meditation retreats underscores a deep, widespread yearning for this exact kind of mental respite. Participants willingly step away from their phones and their voices for days on end, not as a punishment, but as a profound gift to themselves. The initial hours can be uncomfortable as the mind rebels against the lack of external stimulation and turns its noise inward, but with time, that internal noise also begins to settle. Without the constant need to narrate, justify, or plan, the mind discovers a deeper rhythm. Participants often report emerging from such retreats with a renewed sense of perspective, a diminished reactivity to minor irritations, and a clearer understanding of what truly matters to them. They have essentially given themselves a full system reboot, using silence as the key to shut down the countless unnecessary programs running in the background of their consciousness. This healing is available to you without a trip to the wilderness or a 10-day retreat. It begins with a conscious decision to carve out small sanctuaries of silence in your daily routine. It could be the first 5 minutes of your morning, spent not with your phone but with a cup of tea in quiet contemplation before the household awakens. It might be turning off the car radio during your commute, using that time not for more input but for processing the day ahead or releasing the one behind you. It could be a commitment to eating one meal a day in silence, truly tasting your food and being present with your own body's signals. These are not grand gestures, but they are radical acts of self-care in a world opposed to quiet. They are how you regularly drain the stress from your system and reconnect with the Stoic tranquility that is your natural state. So the question is not if you are too busy for silence, but whether you can afford to continue without it. When will you decide to give yourself the profound and healing gift of silence? Your words should reflect your character. This ethical imperative lies at the very heart of Stoic integrity, where the goal is not merely to act virtuously on occasion, but to achieve a seamless alignment between your inner principles and your outer expression in the world. Every time we open our mouths, we have a choice: to use speech as a tool for constructing truth and fostering connection, or to use it as a weapon for manipulation, a mask for insecurity, or simply as noise to fill an uncomfortable void. The Stoics argued that unnecessary speech, gossip, exaggeration, flattery, or complaint is more than just a waste of breath. It is a subtle erosion of your own virtue. Each time you say something you don't truly believe, or something designed to curry favor rather than convey truth, you create a tiny crack in the foundation of your integrity. Over time, these cracks can widen into a chasm between who you are and who you present yourself to be, leading to a life of dissonance and inauthenticity that is the very opposite of the Stoic ideal of a unified, harmonious self. Epictetus, with his characteristically direct style, placed immense emphasis on guarding one's speech as a primary duty of the philosophical life. He instructed his students to speak only what is true and necessary, advising, "Let your silence be the majority of your life. Speak only when you must, and then only briefly and to the point." This isn't a call for absolute muteness, but for a rigorous filter of intentionality. Before speaking, the Stoic practitioner learns to ask, is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? If a statement fails any of these tests, especially the first two, the virtuous choice is to hold it back. This discipline transforms communication from a reactive habit into a conscious practice of moral craftsmanship. You are not just sharing information, you are actively building and reinforcing your own character with every word you choose to utter, and equally with every word you choose to withhold. Your silence becomes the protective barrier that prevents the unvirtuous thought from becoming an unvirtuous action, allowing you to live more truthfully by speaking more truthfully. The profound link between honest silence and a trustworthy character is perfectly captured in a powerful observation from the author and speaker Brian Tracy, who said, "Integrity is the most valuable and respected quality of leadership." Always keep your word. This extends beyond just keeping promises. It means your entire word, everything you say, should be worthy of being kept. It should be reliable, measured, and consistent with your actions. When you practice this, you build a reputation not for being talkative, but for being trustworthy. People learn that your yes means yes and your no means no, and that you won't waste their time or your own with frivolous or dishonest talk. This kind of integrity, communicated through a history of thoughtful speech, earns a depth of respect that no amount of charismatic oratory ever could. Consider the example of a small-town family doctor from a past generation, the kind who knew every patient by name and made house calls. This doctor's reputation wasn't built on advertising or a slick sales pitch. It was built over decades of consistent, quiet action. In every interaction, the doctor listened more than they spoke. They gave diagnoses that were straightforward and honest, even when the news was difficult. They never exaggerated a condition to justify a higher fee, nor did they offer false hope to avoid an uncomfortable moment. Their silence was not cold or detached. It was deeply respectful, creating a space for the patient to be heard and for the truth to be carefully considered. This consistent, honest silence in their speech built an unshakable foundation of trust within the community. People didn't just believe what the doctor said, they believed in the doctor's character. They knew that every word was weighed and every silence was purposeful. This trust was the doctor's most valuable currency, earned not through words, but through the integrity demonstrated by their restraint and their unwavering commitment to truth. This invites a deeply personal and necessary examination of our own daily communication patterns. Does your speech always match your values? Think about the last time you engaged in gossip, even of the mildest sort. In that moment, were your words reflecting a character of kindness and integrity, or were they subtly seeking connection at the expense of someone else's dignity? Recall a time you might have exaggerated a story to make it more entertaining or to make yourself look a little better. Were those words true and necessary, or did they serve the smaller purpose of propping up your ego? Even our constant complaints about the weather or traffic, though seemingly harmless, often reflect a misalignment with the Stoic value of focusing only on what is within our control. By bringing conscious awareness to these seemingly insignificant moments, we begin to see our speech not as a neutral stream of sound, but as the continuous, living expression of our character. The pursuit of integrity is therefore a moment-to-moment practice, happening most powerfully in the small, quiet decisions of what we choose to say and what we courageously, virtuously decide to leave unsaid. Can you stay silent when tested? This is one of the ultimate examinations of Stoic emotional mastery, a direct challenge to our ego's deepest desire to defend, retaliate, and prove itself right. In the heat of provocation, when someone deliberately baits you with a cutting remark or a personal jab, the urge to fire back can feel like a physical force, an almost irresistible compulsion. Yet, it is precisely in these charged moments that the Stoic ideal of rising above pettiness reveals its true power. This isn't about being a passive doormat or suppressing your feelings. It's about making a conscious, strategic choice that your inner peace and personal dignity are far more valuable than the temporary, hollow satisfaction of winning a petty exchange. It is the practice of recognizing that the provocation itself is often a trap, designed to pull you down to the level of the provoker, and your silent refusal to engage is the only way to win a game you never wanted to play in the first place. Seneca, who wrote extensively on the corrosive nature of anger, offered crystal-clear guidance on how to handle those who seek to provoke us. He advised, "The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like that." This simple, profound statement reframes the entire dynamic. Revenge, in the Stoic sense, is not about harming the other person. It is about denying them the one thing they are trying to achieve, your emotional reaction. By refusing to become angry, by refusing to become like that, you claim a victory for your own character. Seneca further counseled on the wisdom of ignoring fools, suggesting that to engage with someone who argues in bad faith is itself a form of folly. He wrote, "When you encounter someone who is quarrelsome, malicious, or otherwise unpleasant, remember that if you are upset by him, you are admitting that he has power over your emotions. Your silence, therefore, is a declaration of independence. It is you stating, through powerful non-action, that your emotional state is your own sovereign territory, and you are not granting them a visa to enter." The practical strength of this approach is perfectly captured in a powerful quote on self-control from the 19th century author, William George Jordan. "Into the hands of every individual is given a marvelous power for good or evil, the silent, unconscious, unseen influence of his life." This is simply the constant radiation of what a man really is, not what he pretends to be. Your silent response to provocation is not a void, it is an active radiation of your true character. It broadcasts a message of unshakable self-control and integrity that is far more impactful than any witty retort could ever be. Imagine a scenario in a crowded office kitchen. A colleague known for their passive-aggressive comments sees you and says, loud enough for others to hear, "Well, someone finally decided to grace us with their presence." Must be nice to have a schedule that allows for such leisurely mornings. The bait is obvious. The easy, ego-driven response is to snap back with a comment about their own work ethic, or to launch into a defensive explanation about your very valid reasons for being later than usual. But this immediately pulls you into their drama, validates their attempt to publicly embarrass you, and guarantees an awkward tension for the rest of the day. Now envision the Stoic response. You slowly finish pouring your coffee, turn to them with a calm, neutral expression, and say nothing. You simply hold their gaze for a brief, comfortable moment, and then you walk away. Your silence is deafening. It completely deprives them of the conflict they were seeking. It leaves them standing alone with their own petty comment hanging in the air, making them look foolish without you having to utter a single word. You have not ignored them, you have neutered their provocation by refusing to give it the energy it needed to live. You radiated calm, and in doing so, you demonstrated to everyone present, and most importantly to yourself, who truly has mastery over the situation. This practice transforms potential conflicts into opportunities to fortify your character. Every time you meet a provocation with silence, you are not losing. You are making a deposit into your personal account of inner peace. You are strengthening the neural pathway that leads to pause and choice, while weakening the old, reactive pathway that leads to regret. So, let's make this incredibly personal and immediate. What provocation can you choose to meet with dignified silence today? It might be that snippy comment from a family member designed to get a rise out of you. It could be the aggressive driver trying to incite a road rage incident. It might even be a critical comment on a social media post screaming for a heated reply. Identify that one potential trigger and make a pre-commitment to yourself. Decide now that your peace is more important than your pride. When the moment arrives, take a deep breath, feel the urge to respond, rise and then fall, and wear your silence like a suit of armor. You will find that what you gain in self-respect and tranquility is infinitely more valuable than anything you could have ever won by fighting back. Great ideas often emerge not from the frantic search for answers, but from the patient stillness that allows answers to find us. In the quiet spaces between our thoughts, when the constant internal narration finally subsides, we create the perfect conditions for true innovation to take root. This is the creative power of silence, a principle the Stoics understood not as an empty void, but as a fertile ground for the mind. Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on the necessity of an uncluttered mind, seeing it as the foundation for clear judgment and virtuous action. He wrote in his private journal, "Nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He wasn't advocating for escape from the world, but for a deliberate retreat into inner quietude, where the noise of external opinions and internal anxieties could be silenced, making room for the subtle, original insights that chaos drowns out. This inner sanctuary is where we can hear the faint whispers of inspiration that are so easily missed in the din of daily life. This connection between stillness and breakthrough is perfectly articulated by the renowned composer John Cage, who spent a lifetime exploring the role of silence in art. He observed, "There is no such thing as an empty space or an empty time. There is always something to see, something to hear. In fact, try as we may to make a silence, we cannot." What he meant is that what we often call silence is not an absence, but a different kind of presence. It is a state of heightened awareness where we become attuned to the subtler frequencies of our own intuition and the world around us. For the creative mind, this is the most productive state imaginable. It's not about doing nothing. It's about engaging in the deepest form of listening, to the patterns forming in your subconscious, to the unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, to the gentle nudge of a new idea struggling to be born. This is why so many great thinkers and artists have actively cultivated solitude and quiet, not because they were antisocial, but because they recognized it as their most vital workshop. History offers countless testaments to this creative catalyst. Take the brilliant inventor Nikola Tesla, who possessed an almost superhuman capacity for intense, silent visualization. He would conceive entire complex machines, every gear, every coil, every current entirely within the theater of his own mind, in perfect, silent detail, before ever committing a single sketch to paper. He famously said that he did not need models or experiments to test his ideas. He could build them in his imagination and run them for weeks, observing them for wear and tear, all within the profound silence of his own thoughts. His most groundbreaking ideas emerged from this deep, internal stillness. Similarly, the author Marcel Proust, who wrote one of the most intricate novels ever conceived, spent his later years largely in a soundproofed room, deliberately insulating himself from the auditory clutter of Paris to better hear the intricate echoes of memory and sensation that would become his masterpiece, In Search of Lost Time. For him, external silence was the essential condition for amplifying the rich, complex music of his internal world. The process is not reserved for legendary figures. It operates on a fundamental neurological level. When our brains are at rest, when we are not actively focused on a demanding task, they engage what neuroscientists call the default mode network. This is not a state of idleness, but a vital period of consolidation and integration. It is during these quiet moments while walking, showering, or simply staring out a window that our minds are most actively making unexpected connections, solving problems we've been stuck on, and generating novel ideas. The aha moment in the shower doesn't happen in spite of the quiet. It happens precisely because of it. The constant busyness of modern life, with its endless notifications and distractions, effectively blocks this crucial cognitive process. By intentionally seeking silence, we are not being unproductive. We are activating the mind's most sophisticated creative engine. So what might you create in the quiet if you gave it a genuine chance? It might not be a revolutionary invention or a literary classic. It could be a more elegant solution to a persistent problem at work, one that has eluded you during hours of frustrated effort. It could be a moment of clarity about a relationship where you finally understand the other person's perspective, not because they explained it again, but because you finally created the mental space to truly see it. It could be the first line of a poem, the melody for a song, or the vision for a garden, arriving not as a demand, but as a gentle gift from the depths of your own uncluttered mind. The creative potential is not outside of you, it is within, waiting patiently for the noise to settle so it can finally make itself heard. People remember how you made them feel, not the specific words you said. This simple truth from the author Maya Angelou reveals a profound secret of social influence, that the emotional residue of an interaction often carries far more weight than its informational content. In the realm of conversation, we often operate under a false assumption that to be liked and remembered, we must be witty, entertaining, and constantly contributing. We see dialogue as a performance, a stage upon which we must prove our intelligence and worth. But the Stoics, particularly Epictetus, understood something much deeper about human connection. He taught that true empathy begins not with speaking, but with a disciplined effort to understand the world from another person's perspective. This isn't about pretending to care. It's about the genuine, curious practice of seeing their reasoning, their desires, and their fears as valid within their own framework. When you prioritize this understanding over your own need to be understood, you fundamentally shift the dynamic of any social exchange. You are no longer a competitor for airtime. You become a sanctuary for someone else's experience. This practice transforms silence from a passive state into an active social tool of incredible value. Think of the most magnetic person you know at a party or gathering. They are rarely the one holding court with a loud, captivating story. More often, they are the person who makes you feel like you are the most interesting person in the room. How do they achieve this? Through the art of attentive silence. They are the ones asking a thoughtful question and then leaning in, completely focused on your response, without their eyes darting around the room to see who else is there. Their silence is not empty, it is full of presence. It communicates a powerful, unspoken message. What you are saying matters. I value your thoughts. In this moment, you have my complete attention. This level of focused attention is so rare in our distracted world that it feels like a gift. It makes people feel truly seen and heard, which is one of the most fundamental human cravings. That feeling of being validated and understood is what builds deep rapport and, ironically, makes the listener incredibly likable and influential. A masterful example of this can be found in the archetype of the brilliant therapist or the trusted confidant. They are not revered for the wisdom of their speeches, but for their profound capacity to listen. They create a space of unconditional acceptance through their quiet attention, allowing the other person to unravel their own thoughts and arrive at their own conclusions. The therapist's well-timed silence, punctuated perhaps by a simple, empathetic nod, does more to build trust and encourage disclosure than any amount of advice ever could. This principle is perfectly articulated by the Greek philosopher Plutarch, who said, "I don't need a friend who changes when I change and who nods when I nod. My shadow does that much better." A true friend, a true connector, is someone whose silence is not mere agreement, but a form of deep respect that allows you to be your full, authentic self without judgment. Their quiet support gives you the courage to explore your own ideas aloud. This dynamic plays out in every facet of our lives. In a networking event, the person who spends the first 5 minutes of a conversation asking about the other person's work, their challenges, and their passions will be remembered far more fondly than the one who delivers a perfectly rehearsed elevator pitch. The silent, attentive listener is gathering social currency. They are learning what motivates the other person, what they value, and what they need. This knowledge is priceless. It allows them to later offer a relevant article, a helpful introduction, or a piece of support that is perfectly tailored. This isn't manipulation. It is the foundation of genuine networking, which is about building a web of mutual support, not collecting business cards. The listener becomes a node of connection and value, and people are naturally drawn to that. So, let's turn this powerful lens inward onto your own web of relationships. How could a conscious practice of listening more deeply transform your connections? Imagine a conversation with your partner after a long day. Instead of waiting for your turn to talk about your own stress, what if you simply asked, "What was the hardest part of your day?" and then sat in supportive silence as they shared? Imagine a catch-up with an old friend where you resisted the urge to jump in with "That reminds me of when I's story," and instead asked a follow-up question that showed you were truly tracking with their experience. In each of these moments, you are making a deposit into the emotional bank account of that relationship. You are building a reservoir of goodwill and trust that strengthens the bond far more than any clever anecdote ever could. Your silence becomes the fertile ground in which deeper, more authentic relationships can grow. The best decisions are made in calm, not chaos. This simple truth is the bedrock of Stoic wisdom when it comes to navigating life's countless crossroads, from the minor daily choices to the monumental, life-altering ones. In the frantic rush of modern life, we are often pressured to decide quickly, to trust our gut in an instant, and to keep moving without looking back. But the Stoics proposed a radically different approach, one that values deliberate pause over impulsive speed. They understood that our initial, reactive judgment is frequently clouded by emotion, bias, and the sheer noise of external pressures. The practice of deliberative silence is the intentional act of creating a buffer between the stimulus, the need to choose, and your final response. It is in this quiet space that you can disentangle your logical assessment from your emotional reaction, ensuring your decision is guided by virtue and long-term benefit rather than fleeting fear or desire. Seneca, the great Stoic statesman and advisor to Emperor Nero, was a powerful advocate for this thoughtful approach to action. He saw the unchecked rush to judgment as a primary source of error and regret. In his moral letters, he counseled, "Delay is the greatest remedy for anger, and we can extend this wisdom to all decision-making. The pause is the remedy for rashness." He advised to never make a decision in the heat of any passion, but to instead put things off until the mind has settled into a state of calm clarity. This is not about procrastination or avoidance. It is about strategic patience. It is the discipline of allowing the turbulent waters of emotion to still, so you can see clearly to the bottom of the issue and make a choice you can stand by with conviction, regardless of the outcome. A powerful quote that captures this spirit comes from the ancient Greek poet Hesiod, who wrote, "He is best who thinks for himself and takes thought for the future." Good, too, is he who follows wise advice, but he who neither thinks for himself nor lays to heart what others tell him is a useless man. The deliberative silence we're discussing is that very act of thinking for oneself, of laying things to heart before any action is taken. We can see this principle embodied in the leadership of Abraham Lincoln during the most tumultuous period in American history. Faced with unimaginable pressure, with advisors and the public demanding immediate and drastic action on every front, Lincoln was known for his deliberate, almost painstaking, pace in reaching major decisions. He would often retire to a quiet room to think, or he would write long memos to himself, arguing out the pros and cons of a particular course of action from every conceivable angle. Before issuing the Emancipation Proclamation, a decision that would fundamentally alter the character of the Civil War and the nation itself, he spent weeks in contemplative silence, weighing the immense moral and strategic implications. He did not act on his first impulse or the loudest voice in the room. He consulted his own inner silence, his deeply held principles, and a reasoned analysis of the consequences. This quiet deliberation ensured that when he finally did act, it was from a place of unshakable conviction and strategic clarity, not reactive passion. His decisions, born from silence, had a gravity and wisdom that shaped the course of history. This practice transforms decision-making from a stressful reaction into a purposeful ritual. Imagine you are presented with a tempting job offer. It comes with a significant pay raise and a prestigious title, but it would also require moving your family across the country and entering a high-pressure environment. The initial, ego-driven impulse might be to say yes immediately, fueled by excitement and the flattery of being chosen. But the Stoic approach would be to impose a period of deliberate silence. You would thank them for the offer and request a specific amount of time, perhaps 48 hours, to consider it. In that time, you wouldn't just make lists. You would sit in quiet contemplation. You might ask yourself Stoic questions. Is this opportunity aligned with my core values? What is within my control and what is not in this new role? How does this serve my broader purpose in life, beyond salary and status? This silent interrogation allows you to separate the glitter of the offer from its true substance. The initial excitement will fade in the quiet, and what remains will be a much clearer picture of the actual choice, enabling you to decide based on a holistic view of your life's philosophy, not just a momentary thrill. So how would your own decisions, both large and small, improve if you intentionally wove more silence into the process? It might mean waiting 24 hours before making any major purchase, allowing the desire for novelty to be tempered by the calm light of morning. It could be taking 5 minutes of quiet breathing before responding to a provocative email, ensuring your words are tools for resolution, not weapons for escalation. It might even be the simple habit of a nightly review, where in the silence of your own mind, you contemplate the choices you made that day and what you learned from them, thus preparing a wiser mind for the decisions of tomorrow. Each moment of silence inserted before a choice is an investment in the quality of your future. It is the practice of becoming the author of your life story with thoughtful intention, rather than its frantic, reactive character, forever at the mercy of the latest plot twist. Throughout our journey into the speechless strategy, we've uncovered how 4 core Stoic practices: deep listening, disciplined restraint, emotional mastery, and cultivating inner stillness work in harmony to create a form of influence that is both profound and deeply personal. This isn't a strategy of withdrawal or passivity. True Stoic silence is an active, intentional, and powerful form of engagement with the world. It is the lever that allows you to move situations with less effort, to understand people with greater clarity, and to protect your peace with unwavering resilience. You've seen how listening first grants you unparalleled insight, how restraint in speech projects unshakable confidence, how a pause can diffuse conflict and foster connection, and how inner quiet provides the clarity needed for wise action. These are not separate tricks but interconnected pillars of a philosophy designed for self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius, whose words have guided us, left us with a final thought perfectly suited for this moment of reflection. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly, and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature." This tranquility of a well-ordered mind is the ultimate reward for practicing the speechless strategy. It is the internal quietude that allows you to navigate a noisy world without being thrown into chaos, to respond from a place of principle rather than react from a place of impulse. Your mind becomes your sanctuary, a place of strength and serenity that no external event can easily disturb. This wisdom is not meant to be simply admired, it is meant to be lived. The real transformation begins when you step away from this video and into your own world. I encourage you to conduct a simple experiment. Choose one interaction today, a conversation with a coworker, a moment with your family, or even a debate online, and consciously apply just one element of this strategy. Perhaps you will choose to listen without formulating a reply, or maybe you will insert a deliberate pause before responding to a provocation. Observe what happens. Notice the shift in the dynamic, the change in your own emotional state, and the different outcomes that emerge from this place of purposeful quiet. Your own experience will be the most powerful teacher. Your journey with Stoicism doesn't have to end here. If you found value in exploring these ancient strategies for modern life, consider subscribing to this channel. We regularly delve into practical philosophies that can help you build resilience, find clarity, and live with greater intention. And I would genuinely love to hear about your experiments with silence. What did you discover? What challenges did you face? Share your experiences and insights in the comments below. Your story could be the inspiration someone else needs to start their own journey toward a more thoughtful, influential, and peaceful way of being. Thank you for watching, and may you find great strength and wisdom in the quiet space.